I was born in Detroit. I was born in a musical family. My mother was a singer, writer, dancer. She even played conga drums too, which was great. My dad was a tap dancer. At any rate, we were being trained to be in show business. And my sister, my brothers, Martin and Lonnie, and myself. Now, my sister, she couldn't dance and couldn't sing. It's weird how that happens. When my other brothers, they were into it. And we were born at 426 Hendry Street. Never forget that. I mean, in that place you could kind of keep your door open, talk to your neighbors, no problems. I wouldn't try that today. At any rate, we were in rehearsals all the time. And my mother would have a lot of entertainers come by, a lot of singers and dancers, and we'd have to perform for them. We'd work out our routines, and they would look at us and see how we did, and would applaud and all that. It was great. And she was grooming us for contests. And one of the main places we were headed for was the Apollo in New York. Now, the Apollo in New York had the amateur show going there that was fantastic. And everybody in the black neighborhood, for sure, all over the country knew about the Apollo. Now, my mother was performing in New York, and she knew the guy who ran the amateur shows at the Apollo. I think his name was Cooper. So he put us on. Now, what we had to do was get there early enough and get us a spot, because he was kind of slipping us in. That was good. When we arrived at the Apollo, we had to go in through the artist entrance, which was on 126th Street. And we'd go into this back door, and it was crowded. I mean, it was like people going up and down the stairs, and there was people all over the place. And but the guy was kind of slipping us in, so we had to get to the backstage area. At any rate, we're standing there. My mom is there, my brothers and I, and the show is on. Now, next to me was this guy standing. He had on some huge shoes. He had on this crazy looking outfit, makeup on, over 6 feet tall, and he had this stalk in his hand, looked like a hook, like a hook. And very frightening looking guy. And the show is on, and this girl is singing, and she's terrible. Every other note, you can make you cringe. All of a sudden, the guy steps out on the stage with the hook, whips this hook around the girl, does a stupid dance as he pulls her off the stage. The audience goes crazy. They loving it. My brother's scared. I'm frightened. And my mother says, don't worry about it. The hook won't get you. This was called, I think it was called the Sandman. And he would pull all the bad acts right off the stage, right in front of the audience. Now, we're scared to death. Guess what? We're next. We go out on the stage. My little brother, who had this great voice, very, very, very afraid, we're singing the song, and he has a solo spot that he does in the song. We sang in a Mills Brothers tune called B.I. Bumble, B.I. Not. I like honey an awful lot. Okay, so it gets to one point where he says, you're as sweet as honey too. That's the reason I love you. Now, when he gets to his part, he dropped down on his knees, put his hands together like he was praying, and he said, you're as sweet as honey too. That's the reason I love you. And the audience goes insane. We win the contest. Can you believe that? Well, from that point on, we were the hottest things in the city. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
We were kids, very little kids, and we became the winning singing group of 3 states, Ohio, Illinois, and Michigan. So as little kids, we were going to doing amateur shows And then they would call us in other cities, and we just thought we was.
You know, everything that I learned to do, the basic part of this was the things that my mother taught me when I was a kid. I mean, it all came back. You know, how you study and you work at things and you spend time at it, and you gotta, you can't get results unless you do. And it was a long lesson, but a wonderful lesson. And she was more than just my mom. She was my friend and everything. I mean, it was great with her. And her talent was just unbelievable. Even today, they sent, I got some product that she did in Europe that they sent me that I didn't even know she had sang these tunes and wrote these tunes. And it's just a joy hearing that. And I know it was very difficult for me when she passed. I remember her being in the hospital, and she had cancer in those days. When they found cancer, they just cut that off. Whatever they had, it amputated. They had no cures working. At any rate, she was there, and they had worked on her 2 or 3 times, and we were all visiting her. And she got so weak till she couldn't talk. She either had to blink her eyes or something. I know we were there visiting, and it was time to leave. And just before that, she was trying to reach to ring the bell to call the nurse, and she was stretching her fingers, and she couldn't quite make it. So I reached over and I pressed the button for her, and she smiled. The nurse came in. Of course, she had to go to the bathroom, and they brought her back and put her in the bed, and everybody started saying their goodbyes. And I'm standing there thinking, I said, wow, what if she has to do something else? Who's going to push the button? So what I did was, I was about 13 at that time or something, when everybody left, I got under the bed and I stayed there. They turned out the lights. It was real quiet in her room. And then I came out from under the bed and I looked at her and I grabbed her hand, and she looked at me and I saw the smile in her eyes. And I couldn't do anything. I just held onto her hand, and I immediately went back under the bed because I didn't want her to see me crying. And whenever she needed something, I would come out and check, and I would press the button and go back. And I know when she passed, I couldn't go to the funeral or nothing. It was it. I felt like the world had come to an end. Very difficult for me to get over that. But all the things she taught me, it all came back. And yeah. So I'm in and out of juvenile all the time. So much so till when I come in, the guy would say to me, okay, Mick, get the towel, get the toothbrush and stuff, pick your bed. So like I was a regular place for me. At any rate, it started escalating. And the last time I was out, we had a trial date set for me with the judge. So my grandmother said to me, I was released in her custody. And I said, okay, Mom, this ain't gonna work. I think I will go into the military. And I was 16, you had to be 17 at the time. So my grandmother signed for me to go in, which was great. So I went in, and it got so comfortable for me there till I kind of wanted to stay. I mean, it's like it became a home, you know. It's like one of the, you know, the meals were great, and had a chance to do some entertaining, and I was doing shows on the bass and all that, and that felt pretty good. It was rolling along very good. After about a year, I come home on a furlough, and we go to the Warfield Theater, I think it was called. Yeah, that was like the Apollo in Detroit. That was our Apollo Theater, where they had a lot of shows going on. You had the stars that come in, and you had the contest, and you get a movie and a cartoon. Very cheap. At any rate, I'm there to see Jackie Wilson, my man, Jackie Wilson. And they had the amateur show going on. Now, the show was pretty good. The acts were pretty reasonable. But then these 4 guys come out. Oh, man, they were great. They had on these cocoa brown suits. They had on the Mr. B ties and shirts. That's Billy Eckstine. Had a special shirt in those days. And, man, could they sing. They were singing from, they were called the 4 Aims. They were singing from jazz, rock and roll, R&B, all in one song. Incredible harmony. They were fantastic. I looked at them and I said, man, these guys are going to be stars. And while I was looking at them, I was thinking about the Apollo, I was thinking about my mom, and I was saying to myself, this is the business I want to be in, show business. I made up my mind then. I go back to the base, and I tell my CEO that I was going to leave the military. I wanted to do something else with my career. He said to me, look, you make a good officer. We'll send you to officer training school. It'd be good for you, good for your people, and all that. And I said, yeah, but he said, wait. Why don't you just take a little time off and get back with me and get a chance to make a decision on it. And I said, okay. But when I left, in my mind, on my way home, that was it for me. I was going to be in show business. So, of course, when I got back to Detroit, and I figured I was going to really make it happen right away because I was all fired up, well, it didn't quite go like that. I mean, Detroit, we made cars. It wasn't a show business city. But I thought that maybe something special would happen for me. At any rate, it dropped down to like nothing. And I started feeling out the best way to go, started working with the musicians in the city, and I learned the best players, the most sincere players. And they had the same feeling I had. Like this Detroit was a place for, not for music, but we lived here. So we got to come together. So I started handling the musicians, getting them jobs, booking them. And in the process of that, I started producing some product myself because I knew the best players, they would work for me. And so I started producing some artists singing, recordings, things like that. And I ran into Herman Griffin. Now, Herman Griffin was a black rock and roll singer who wanted to be an R&B singer. I mean, he was all mixed up. And his first song, his agent was a postman. So we have a postman as an agent and a guy who wants to sing rock and roll and R&B, and he was out to lunch. At any rate, the money was good. So I had him, his first song was called Rockin' and Rollin' in My Hot Rod Car. And I was saying to myself, ain't no black station going to play this record, but he wanted it. They were paying for it. I did the product. Herman Griffin turned out to be, later, Mary Wells' husband. And that's a whole other story. We will get to that. At any rate, working with Herman and producing other records, my friends that I went to school with came to me and said, look, man, we have this date to go on the road with Lionel Hampton as the Hamptones. And we had another singer, but he joined another group, so would you go with us? Because if we don't bring in 4 guys, we'll lose the gig. And I said, perfect. I mean, I loved it. Here I am. I'm not making any money worth discussing. Anyway, the successful move of being a producer, writer, and all that stuff in Detroit was not happening. And all of a sudden, I get this opportunity to go out with Lionel Hampton and the Hamptones. Oh, that was great. At any rate, we take off. I immediately called back, tell my wife at the time, would you believe, that I'm leaving. I'll send you some money. Don't worry about it. And I took off the following day.
And they were probably the only professional group in our circle. The rest of us, we would be playing, like doing little amateur shows at the Madison Ballroom and stuff like that in Detroit. And then the Hamptones would come on, and they were professionals. And Mickey was in that group. And I saw him long before I met him.
Once I got on the road with Lionel Hampton and the Hamptones, touring, traveling, I got the opportunity to learn so much from his wife, Gladys, who handled everything. I mean, I learned about personalities, how to get the job done, how to inspire the musicians and the people to work. I learned which ones would be leaders, who followed who, why they followed them. It was great. It was like a full. She said to me once, "Why are you studying me?" I said, "Because, I'm just learning so much." She said, "All right, take it easy. This is not a circus." At any rate, she was great. She gave us a manager, and his name was Barnett. And he was managing us as a group with the Hamptones. Now, the Barnett guy, I believe, and to this very day, because he was charged us like 20%, that she was getting half of that because he was doing nothing. But I learned that the people who do nothing do that so well that they get paid. I said, I love this business. At any rate, we stayed out on the road for quite some time. And in that, traveling with the Hamptones, we went to the best places in America, the greatest clubs. I saw the best lights set, the best sound put up, the way shows should be balanced. It was unbelievable. And it all stayed in my head. I go back to Detroit. Now, there was still nothing really happening in the music business, but we did have some ripples going on. Of course, my man Jackie Wilson came out of Detroit, and we had the Flame Show Bar and different things happening. So it was something about happening, but nothing to get excited about until I met Berry Gordy. Now, Berry and I met at a barbershop where everybody on 12th Street, if you wanted to get your hair done, look the right, see the right people, you had to go to Benny Mullen's barbershop. We called him Muldoon, which was like a joke. At any rate, Benny liked to introduce people so that you could get to talking. Therefore, you won't think about how much time you're spending in the barbershop, because you spend a lot of time in that barbershop. So he introduced Berry and I. And he said to me, okay, hey, Mick, this is a guy that wrote that song you like by Jackie Wilson. I said, what are you talking about? To Be Loved? He wrote that song? So I was excited, but I was real cool. I said, oh, man, that's a great song. I mean, Jackie Wilson's my man. And Berry said, well, I'm doing an album on him. But I heard about you and the musicians. You got a nice group of guys that you work with. So I was real cool still. I said, yeah, but I also write songs, and I'm kind of building myself up. And he said, well, we got to get a chance to talk. I'm going to Chicago, finish this album. When I come back, I'll get with you. So I said, yeah. I said, well, I got a couple of songs for Jackie Wilson. I thought I'd try to ease that in there. He gave me a little smirk on his face. He said, okay, well, we'll see about that. And by this time, the dryers are ready. But when the dryer's ready, you better get under it, because if you don't make that dryer, you got big trouble. So we're both under the dryer. And of course, with me, I fall asleep like always. And when I wake up, he's gone. And there I am in the chair and thinking about, man, this is going to be great. I met Berry Gordy, and I get some of my songs to Jackie Wilson. And I was all excited about that as we walked out of the shop.
Mickey tried to convince Berry Gordy that he should sing for Motown, but the chairman had a different idea.
Mickey Stevenson first came to Motown. He auditioned for me as a singer. As soon as he started singing, I said, what else can you do?
So he said, okay, you're a songwriter and all that. I said, yeah. He said, okay, let me hear your song. So I said, you got no piano. How do I do my song? He said, you open your mouth and you start singing. So that was like a challenge to me. So I said, okay. I reached in my briefcase, break out one of my best songs. I said, if only the sky was a mirror. I started saying, he said, stop. He said, your voice is for shit. But your song seems all right.
He said, oh, I'm not finished yet. And I said, I know, what else can you do? He said, I got some more songs. I said, what else can you do? He said, anything that has to do with music. I said, well, I'm looking for an A&R man, a director. Can you do that? Absolutely, he said.
Well, that was not what I came there for. But I figured, okay, if we have to get in, I got to get in. So I said to him, how much you paying? Then that little grin came on his face. And he said, $5 a day. I said, what? And all the chili you can eat. Can you imagine $5 a day and all the chili you can eat?
I said, what is an A&R director? So Mickey said, well, I don't know exactly, but I do know it has something to do with music, studio musicians, and recording and stuff like that.
So I said, let me ask you a question. Am I in charge? I'm in charge of the musicians and the artists and all that? He said, yeah. Can I sign and record anybody I want to record? He said, yeah. You're the A&R man. That's what A&R people do. I said, oh, yeah. Can I sign myself and record myself? He said, yeah. I wouldn't want to hear it, though. He said, but I tell you one thing. You got to be honest. I said, yeah, you got to be honest. Okay. He said, yeah. If it don't work, if it don't sound right, it ain't happening, you don't want to do it. I said, okay, I'll take it on. That's when I took this job.
And so Berry listened to him, and he didn't think he was going to make a good artist, but he liked Mickey's demeanor. And so Mickey ended up becoming our first A&R director at Motown. And for those of you who perhaps do not know what A&R means artist and repertoire, which means that Mickey was the one who doled out the studio time for you going in to record the artist that you wanted to record at that time if you were a producer or a writer or something like that. And Mickey coordinated all that. And Mickey also, he did one of the most dynamic things that's ever been done at Motown, in as much as Mickey was the one who put the Funk Brothers together.
I met Mickey Stevenson when I was still in high school. I had started to play with a local band and was told that I needed to join the Musicians Union. So I went to the Musicians Union to join up. And I saw this guy who was very smartly dressed. And he kind of stuck out. And I asked somebody, who's that guy? And he said, well, that guy is Mickey Stevenson. He's over here putting together some musicians for Hitsville. I said, Hitsville? Well, I'd heard of Hitsville, you know, it's a local company, which was later to become Motown.
Mickey went around to little clubs in Detroit and one by one gathered the guys who became the Funk Brothers. And they were like an awesome band. And they played on almost every Motown record ever in the early days of Motown. So Mickey is responsible for putting that group together. And that is very, very, very significant to the history of Motown.
And he was somebody that you just kind of held in awe and wondered about, because he was so mysterious but so knowledgeable about the industry and what he was doing, and you just kind of wondered, where did he get all this information from, and how did, you know, he know so much at that time, but he did.
As he came in, I thought that he had been doing A&R or something to that you know, same status for years. I didn't realize that he was just starting out pretty much like we were. He just seemed to have this vast amount of energy as well as knowledge. And of course, you know, the one thing is that I didn't realize he was as young as he was. I thought he was a lot older because, I guess, because of his mannerisms and his attitude about professionalism and taking care of business.
Mickey turned out to be the greatest A&R man ever. He wrote, produced, brought in musicians like the Funk Brothers, brought my attention to little Stevie Wonder. He even brought in a pizza delivery guy who was a writer who wrote the biggest standard song we had, a song called For Once in My Life. His name was Ron Miller.
Well, this Motown thing was great. I mean, I was working my ass off. Things was happening. Artists was producing, was getting writers. Everything was really cooking. And just like he said, I was in charge. No problems. I had no problems with nobody. I did whatever I thought could make this thing work. Berry came up to me one time and he said, look, man, we need some jazz artists. We need to have a jazz division. I said, jazz, B, what do we need jazz for? It's less than 17% of the market. He said, hey, I want jazz. So get some jazz artists. You got that? Okay, it's his company. So I decided I could find some jazz artists. So I toured around New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, whatever. Nothing. I found nothing that knocked me out. Because, see, we're going after hit product. I mean, something that would be leave an impression. And I didn't hear any of that. So I'm in Chicago, and I find this one girl. Good voice, good style. I said, uh-oh, we got a Nancy Wilson thing going here. All I need is a couple of good songs, and I can make this happen. So while I'm in Chicago, I don't hear none of the songs I like, nothing. So I tell the girl, I said, look, this is your town. You know all the musicians. Okay, I need some songs. So have them stop by your place starting tomorrow and let me listen to them. She said, but they're not writers. I said, look, any musician that plays guitar, maybe bass, piano, they are writers. They just need somebody to listen to what they got. She says, okay. I said, you just tell them. So sure enough, she lined them up. We're at her house and they're coming in. I'm listening to these songs over and over, and everybody's got the same thing. It ain't happening. Okay, I'm wore out. It's late. I can't take no more. They want to eat. They order some pizza. The pizza guy comes. It's late, like about 1 o'clock in the morning. He's walking down, white boy, outfit on with the hat on, the cook hat and all that crap, pizza in his hand. I said, hey, man, you coming at this hour but delivering pizzas on the south side of Chicago? You crazy? He said, I heard the music down the hall and you guys looking for songs and stuff. I said, man, why don't you leave that pizza and get out of here? He said, no, man. I mean, I heard you guys was playing. I thought maybe I'm a songwriter and all that. And he kept talking and talking. And I said, hold it. I told the guy at the piano, get up. Can you play piano? He said, yeah. I said, let me hear your song. The guy sits down on the piano, makes an arpeggio. He starts singing. For once in my life, I have someone who needs me, someone I needed so long. He started crying. For once I'm afraid I am. I said, stop, man. You wrote that song? He said, yeah. I said, you got any more? He said, yeah. He started, I said, don't play it. I reached in my pocket, pulled out the money for the pizza. Then I peeled off another $100. I said, you meet me at the airport in 1 hour. I'll take you to Detroit and make you a songwriter. He had the money in his hand. At this point, the guys in the apartment said, hey, man, you must be crazy. That guy's not going to meet you. You just throw away $100. Some kind of fool or something. Ron turned to me and he said, suppose I don't show up. I said, I lose $100. You lose a career. That was it. He walked away. I'm at the airport, And I look up, here he come walking down the aisle with a satchel in his hand. I said, where your clothes, man? He said, right here. I said, come on, let's go. We fly to Detroit. I take him right into the studio, go to the finance department. I said, listen, I want you to make him a check out for the payroll. I want to make you give him a check for his hotel. He'll be here for a few days. And I'm signing him to a contract as one of the writers with the company. Well, the finance guy thought I had lost my mind. And he said, what? And I just looked at him and walked away. About 20, 30 minutes later, Berry comes over to my office. He said, man, what are you doing? You paying this guy as much money as you paying our writers here? And you know, this white boy, you know, and we doing R&B. I said, wait a minute, BG. Hang on one second. I say, Ron, come here. Play that song you played for me in Chicago. Ron sat down at the piano, made arpeggio. For once in my life, I have someone who needs me, someone I needed so long. For once unafraid, he started crying. That's blue when life leads me, long as I know. Barry say, stop. He looked at me. He looked at Ron. He just walked out of the office. I looked at the finance guy and said, and that was it. Things started happening. We started having hit records. People were coming from everywhere to be a part of Motown. They would come to audition from Philadelphia, Chicago, Ohio. They would come as far as New York and California just to be a part of Motown. It was catching on like fire. Now, in the auditions, and I was having like 35 people or better constantly, I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a formula for audition. I was just looking for things. I was looking for singers, songwriters, producers, even musicians. If you got something and it was working, I wanted it. Now, in the auditions, since I had no formula, no procedure, I would say to you, you're a singer? Start singing. If you didn't sing, if you didn't hit it right away, I would sing. I was cold like that. I didn't know no other way. And I found out later that I had to change my way of handling auditions. What happened was, we're having a cigarette break. Larry Maxwell, who was one of our fantastic promotion guys, and I were on the porch talking. It was cold, snow was coming down, and we was out there having a quick smoke, talking about the records and what's going on. And all of a sudden, we see this guy running down the street towards the studio. And he had this gun in his hand, and he had an overcoat on, and he was naked, and his coat was flying, and his business was flying, and he had the gun in his hand, he was firing. And Maxwell say, man, that guy's shooting at you. I said, shooting at me? And by the time he got close enough, and the police come up and they grabbed him and all that, I remembered he was one of the guys that came for an audition. And he had this terrible song and this terrible voice. And I told him, man, you better keep your job, get out of here. What are you trying to do? Blah, blah, blah. And I had no idea. I hurt this guy's feelings. And he said, Mickey Stevenson, you ruined my life. You ruined my life. And they pulled him away. And I said, oh, man. So now I had to change my way of handling auditions. I would say to people when they come in, okay, they have a terrible song and they had a terrible voice. I would say things like, that's pretty good, but right now we're not quite ready for you at Motown. Why don't you come back 6 months from now or 3 months from now, and we'll try it again. We'll be prepared for you. And I stayed with that theory because the ones who sang the worst, with the worst songs, are the most passionate, and they're the most dangerous. So I learned how to handle it, and I stuck to my story all the time. When they came in, and they would say they were a writer, I'd say, let me hear your song. So each time, out of maybe 30 people, nothing. But then this one person would come in, and they would either be a writer or a singer or whatever, and they'd start showing me what they could do, and it would be right there. Sometimes they'd come as a singer, and they were better as a writer. Sometimes they would come as a writer, and they were better as a singer. But I didn't have any formula. I just listened, picked out what I thought was right, and then I'd spend time with that person. Now, if I'm sitting there and you sang your song, I like your song, I want to hear more, no matter who was at the door, who was trying to get in, I tell them, hold up, nobody can move. I'm just dealing with this one person. And I found some incredible talent there.
So one day, I went up to the studio, getting ready for rehearsal, and I was sitting on, they had a big orange couch sitting in the lobby of Motown. They kept it a long time, big long couch. And I was sitting there, and I saw a group of guys, 4 guys standing there talking to the receptionist. And then this thin guy come down. I didn't know who he was, but he was sharp, like all the rest of them guys. He looked successful. And they were talking to him. They said, hey, man, please, Mickey, please put this record out. They would call him Mickey. He didn't mean nothing to me. I didn't know him. And he was so cool. He says, he had a thing during those days. Only he could do it. He had a thing when he talked to you like he's mesmerizing you. He says, just relax, relax, relax. He says, it's coming out, I promise, it's coming out. And that was the 4 Tops he was talking to. You know, the record that they were talking about was Baby, I Need Your Lovin'. One of the biggest records of the time. And Mickey said, it's coming out. He had that kind of power.
But we had such great times together. He is, I think, a natural comedian.
The first person I really worked with the company was Mary Wells. And during my tenure with Mary Wells, a record that I had produced locally, which was probably a couple of years before, was released and it was playing on the radio. So one day I walked into the studio and Mickey said, did you produce that song on the Edward Hamilton and the Arabians? And I said, yeah, I did that. He said, bar him out of the studio because he's stealing our sound. Which to him, I was like, I did that before I even came over here. Mickey fired me. The next day I came expecting to be told that I was barred out, but nothing happened after that. But I was fired for 1 day by Mickey Stevenson from Motown. He was known to be the guy who pulled all the things together. I mean, he had good instincts for hiring people. As far as songwriting, he had a knack of being able to listen to a song that someone was working on and putting finishing touches on the song or telling them what he thought the song needed. So he was all around, I think.
Mickey has always been a good talker. Mickey's what you call a convincer. You know what I mean? As far as convincing people to do what he feels like they should be doing. And most of the time, when he convinces people, it's been for their betterment.
Berry Gordy came to me, and he brought Marvin Gaye with him. And he said, Mickey, I want to hit on this guy. Now, Marvin was a jazz singer. I mean, he loved jazz. And Berry had absorbed the company that Marvin was on, which was one of his sister's companies, and brought him all into the whole Motown operation. And he didn't want him singing jazz, he wanted a hit record. Now, that was a challenge for me. I had to try to make this thing work. At one of my auditions, a guy named Ivy Joe Hunter came in as a singer. And Ivy Joe came in, he sat down, he opened up with one of these great blues tunes. He had the turns, the curls in his voice, and the whole 9 yards. And he sang this tune. I said, hold it, man. I said, you got more songs? He said, yeah, because he saw himself being an artist. And I said, I tell you what, I would like to have you as a writer. He said, a writer? I said, yeah, man. I just want you to write songs. You got a great feeling, and I got an idea of who you should do some songs for. He said, well, who? I said, I got this guy, Marvin Gaye, and I think you and your songs and him could be a great marriage. So I started writing with Marvin and Ivy, and we started cooking together. Now, Ivy Joe, with his soulful voice, as we write a song like for the Velvets or the Marvelettes or something, he would sing his line. Then I would sing the lines that I'm writing. I would sing mine. And so we had the same kind of sound going. So when Marvin added his lines to the song, he had to sing in the same style that we were singing in. He couldn't sing it jazz-wise. He had to sing it soulful. And we kept doing this over and over, building this up. Now, we had a tape recorder in every room. And when writers would write, we record everything. So in this case, everything that Ivy Joe, Marvin, and I were doing would also be recorded. So one day, I pulled all of Marvin's lines out on a tape, and I played them for him. And he listened, and I said, how you like that sound? He said, yeah, man, that's good. I said, that's the sound you should be doing. Why don't you sing this song? He said, but I want to do jazz. I said, you sing a couple of R&B songs for me, and I'll let you do a jazz album. He said, you will? I said, look, I'll even produce it with you. He said, okay, William R. I said, okay, now, let's work on a couple of songs now. I said, I'll work with you. Anything that you need to redo or punch in or change, we'll fix it. So he said, okay. So we started. We started with a tune called Stubborn Kind of Fella. And he would sing a line, and he would say, do that line again. I'd sing it, then he'd take my line, and then he'd do it his way. Well, when he did it, it sounded like fantastic. When we finished it, we played it back. I said, now what do you think? He said, man, that's pretty good. We laid it on Berry. That was his first record. Then we started doing the next one and the next one. And by this time, he didn't need me to sing anything. Not only could he sing the part, he would fix it, change it. He was into it. Marvin became, as you know, just wonderful. But his confidence was fantastic, to the point that he didn't mention any jazz to me for some time. But that's another story.
Marvin could actually sing anything. He was one of the greatest singers ever in history. He was one of my favorite people to ever work with as an artist. Aside from just being my brother and hanging out with him every day, he was one of my favorite artists ever. But Mickey was the one who convinced Marvin to start singing rhythm and blues. And he and Marvin wrote this song called Stubborn Kind of Fella. I guess it was probably about Marvin, because Marvin was a stubborn kind of fella. And they recorded the song on Marvin, and it was his first big hit.
Ivy Joe, I love that Ivy Joe. He's a great songwriter, a great personality and all that. There was one thing about him that was really weird. Ivy Joe made a point and a promise that he would not cut his hair until he had a #1 song. I'm talking about he wanted to smash. So, can you imagine this guy be walking around the studio with his hair way up on his head, no comb, no nothing. And he didn't care what you thought about it. It made no difference. He'd go in and get to sing the song, shaking his head. And we stuck with this guy because, I loved his talent. Now, we were working together one night, Ivy, Marvin Gaye, and myself. And we're doing a song for Kim Weston. And we're into the song, and it's the kind of song that it had to have a light melody, a voice-like to it. And Kim is a very strong, powerful balladeer. So we got to figure out how to get her to understand that we want her to sing this song a certain way. And I said, okay, Martha Reeves, who was my secretary at the time, although she says, I'm not a secretary, I am a assistant. I said, okay. So my assistant, Martha, who wanted me to sign her to a contract as a singer for some time, I called her in the studio. I said, Martha, why don't you sing this song we have here? I need a demo, and I want to give it to Kim Weston. And so Martha said, okay. She took the lyrics. Marvin and I went over the song with her for a minute, and she walked out in the studio. I'm ready. She started singing. The song was Dancing in the Street. When Martha finished that song, Ivy Joe, Marvin, and we just looked at each other like, and Ivy Joe said, did you hear what I just heard? I said, yeah, man. Marvin said, that's a smash. Ivy said, that's exactly what I'm talking about. On Martha. And I said, yeah, but we got to do this song. They said, hold it, William R. You the man here? I said, yeah. You the A&R man? Yeah. Your word is the final word here? I said, yeah. That song is a hit on Martha. Well, now I got a problem. I got to figure out how to get Kim not to sing this song because they were absolutely right. Now I got a problem. You see, Kim Weston was my girlfriend at that time, and I was really doing this song for her. But, like Ivy Joe and Marvin said, and I agree, that's a smash on Martha. So now I got to figure out how to get this out the way. I take the tape back to the house. It's like some weird hour in the morning, and Kim is a heavy sleeper, so I'm ringing and banging and going through a lot of changes. I finally wake up. I come right in, go right to the tape recorder, stick the tape in. I say, this is a song we just did in the studio. I want you to listen to this. Well, it's like some weird hour, and she's half asleep, so I turn it up. And she gets back in the bed and she's listening, and she says, okay, I hear it. I played it again. And she said, okay, I'll do it, but I don't like that. I said, no problem. I got another tune for you. So I took it off. I go back to the studio the next morning. I walk in. Ivy Joe and Marvin waiting on me. They're trying to find out what is the end result. They're just standing there. So Ivy Joe say, what happened, Waymar? What are we going to do? I looked at him. I said, Martha got the song. You go get a haircut. And he just jumped for joy. And Marvin said, you the man. You the A&R man. Well, of course, the song is history. It became one of the biggest songs. But the real problem was Kim had nothing to do with me for about 3 or 4 weeks. That was the downside. The upside, the song was phenomenal. It was like one of our biggest songs. And Ivy Joe, he looked so much better with a haircut. He thought he was handsome. He had a few hits after that, too. He didn't have to worry about that, his plea not to cut his hair anymore. After that one, there was one right behind the other with the 4 tops and the dimps, and yeah, he was on a roll. We lived in some difficult times then. But some things were beginning to change. And with Martin Luther King and other leaders, they were bringing another feeling and visual thing to America. As a matter of fact, we recorded I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King weeks before the March on Washington, which was phenomenal. And we were very excited about not only the march, but the fact that families all over America, black and white, were really getting into the Motown sound. So much so until I to this day, I hear friends of mine say, who were kids then, that in their families, they were not allowed to listen to black music, but the music was so hypnotic and so strong from Motown till at night they would get into bed, cover themselves up, and listen to the Motown music. And they were saying to themselves, how could this thing be where black people are supposed to be like this and be like that and yet make this wonderful music? And things were really beginning to change. So the parents of today were the kids of yesterday, and they are all Motown fans. That's fantastic. I got to tell you, Motown music had a calming effect. It was a love potion in troubled times, and it still is. The Motown artists had to be not just singers, but they had to be good performers. And the problem is, we only had one shot to take. Once they were appearing, they had to be great. So to make this work, we had an artist development department. Berry come up with this concept of making the artists learn all they could before they got to the stage, which was incredible. And it was ran by his sister, Harvey Fuqua, myself, and others. Now the thing was this. The deal is, every artist had to spend some time in the artist development department, at least 2 or 3 hours, at least 3 or 4 days a week. And if you didn't go into the development area and work out, you couldn't record. I mean, there was no skipping, ducking, coming up with stories, nothing would work. No artist development, no recording, because they go together. Now, most of them saw the benefits of this, but there were some, they thought their voices were good enough and that was it. But you take an artist like the Supremes, the Four Tops, Temptations, even the Miracles, they didn't waste no time getting better and better. They didn't miss no schedules, they didn't miss no rehearsals. They were on it, I mean on top of it. And people like Diana Ross and Smokey, they would stay longer. If the hours were 2 hours, they'd be there 3 hours. They'd have somebody else waiting to get in because they wanted to get it right. And that was so encouraging and so powerful. And when they hit the stage, you could see the difference. It was great. Now, I'm looking for, okay, I'm looking for better people, better teachers, something better, something for television and all that. I'm constantly looking all the time. I happened to be in Atlantic City. Now, in those days, Atlantic City had artists performing all over the place. I mean, starting at 8 o'clock in the afternoon till 5 o'clock the next morning. So we had 2 or 3 acts there. And I'm watching the acts, seeing what they're doing, giving them some critique and all that. I'm wore out. I decided to stop at a club and give myself a break. Now, most of the clubs in Atlantic City had sawdust on the floor and all that kind of stuff. But this place was really special. And I heard they had some great dancers there, and it was the place to go. So I'm sitting in the club, and the show opens up. There was the group of the girls dancers were called, I can't remember, but it'll come to me. Anyway, they come out with these incredible outfits on, great bodies, and they do this tremendous song, dance against a great arrangement. It was half jazz, half R&B, and then the male dancer come out and he dances with them, and it's just fantastic. And I said, wow, we need some of this at Motown. And I asked the bartender, I said, listen, who designed this stuff? He said, that guy, Lon Fontaine. I said, I'd like to have a drink with him. Could you send him over to my table? No problem. Lon comes over, and I explained to him that, first of all, his group looked wonderful. The dancers were great. Costumes were great. And I knew he had made them all and everything. And I'd like for him to work with us at Motown. He said, well, I'm a choreographer. I said, we need choreography. We need it. We need you to be there. And the girls, 3 girls came with him, and they were talking about, oh, Motown, you have the Temptations and the Four Tops? I said, yeah. And he said, oh, you got, I said, see, they could use your choreography. And I convinced him to come and join Motown. I said, how much you make? He told me. I said, I'll double your salary. Don't worry about it. So you'll double my salary. You got a double salary. I'll see that you get an apartment, everything. He said, okay. I said, now, wait a minute. Who did those arrangements? He said, Gil Askey. I said, I want to meet him. Could you have him come over to my table? So he get Gil. Gil comes over to my table. He sit down. And Gil just sits there and stares at me. And I introduce myself. And no words come out of his mouth. He's just looking. Then he said, you the A. I said, A&R man. I recognized he got a problem here. And I didn't have a lot of time, so I kind of started speeding up the conversation every time he'd get stuck. And that moved the conversation along. I said, I would like for you to teach our guys some of your arrangements and take some of our music and fix it like you did those I just heard on this stage. And he said, I said, listen, we need you. And how much money are you making? He told me, I said, I'll double it. I said, we got plenty of arrangements for you to do. You get paid for the arrangements, and I'll pay you for your time. He said, you got a real passion for this company. I said, hey, man, we're going to be the hottest company in the country, and we'll be better with people like you. And sure enough, I signed Lon Fontaine and Gil Askey and brought them back to Detroit.
People were like just thrilled that they had a record company, a real record company in Detroit. And they were just excited. You know, the excitement it just exuded in the air.
We were gathering a lot of young, talented people. They came to Motown with hope and a way out. They knew that if they got into Motown, it could happen for them. And they were right, because we were dedicated to getting the best out of those that we signed to this company. And that meant all of us. I'm talking about from the producers to the writers. We were working at our best to give them the best so they could be the best. It was a phenomenal feeling. It became a family-tight feeling that was, I guess that was part of the dream of Berry Gordy. We all bought into that dream, which was a wonderful thing.
Mickey and all of us had that family kind of relationship right on. So basically, we all grew up together.
So everybody really admired this guy, but he was a likable guy, but he had a lot of clout. And I got the impression that he was a no-nonsense guy. To run a company with so many stars in it at one time, you had to be able to run it effectively, but not with an iron fist. And I never heard him say a swear word to anyone. Remember now, the Four Tops, the Temptations, Marvin Gaye, Junior Walker, Martha, the Supremes. You had to be clever dealing with people as super talented as they were. You had to know how to get what you want out of them and not make yourself vulnerable and still run the boat.
We had so many young, talented artists, and they brought with them their own individual problems, personalities, doubts, and all that. Now, the talent was there, But to get them to do the best that they could do was the problem. And I had to learn and deal with each one of them separately. And what came out of it was that I became a brother, a friend, a parent, a mentor. Each one I had a different position with. And in being that person to them, I could get them to do the best that they can do. And for that means I would get calls at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning from an artist about a problem that had nothing to do with the studio, but it was on their mind. And since I was close enough, either a parent or a friend or a mentor or whatever, I had to answer that for them the best I could so they could feel better. And then they brought the best they could do for me. And it began to work out. It was fantastic. It was really wonderful.
And I noticed sometimes Mickey would come up and he would stand up in the control booth. I very seldom saw Berry, but I saw Mickey all the time because he was a writer. I didn't know he was a writer. And I found out that if you're going to get a song out, you had to deal with him. If you're going to get a song recorded, you had to deal with him. But he didn't come on like a heavy. You had to get the respect of these people because the Temptations, they were like rogue elephants. You know, I mean, these guys could run into a place and you think there was a bull in a china shop, the building's gone. Not just the china, everything is gone. And so he ran that way, had the respect of the writers, and we had a whole litany of writers that came through there that were very talented. And no matter who it was, they come in naturally when a new musician comes in, he wants to know who's the power. It was Mickey. And you know, you don't usually find an executive with that kind of clout where you call him Mickey. It's Mr. Stevenson or something. Now that would be fitting, but he didn't come off like that where he would demand that kind of approach to it, and it worked very well for him.
Well, Mickey is a dynamic personality. He's got swagger. When he comes into a room, he kind of like feels it to a certain degree. And I think with that kind of personality, it helps you, or it kind of like says, you should do your best, and you can do it. And this is the note, and this is how it should be done. And with that, you want to do it, and you want to make it right for him as well as for yourself.
We wrote a lot of songs, a lot of songs. Some of those songs became hits, and which was wonderful. And I say we, I'm talking about, I wrote with Marvin, I wrote with Smokey, I wrote with Stevie, I wrote with Barrett Strong, Berry Gordy, and Holland Dozier Holland, and they wrote with me, and they wrote with others, and we just kept it going. It was nonstop. If you're in a room writing a song, and you hit a wall, and one of us would walk by and say, let me hear what you got, and they would add something, and it would work because we all became professionals with love in doing these songs, not with envy or jealousy. Even though we were all competitive, we were still one. So therefore, it was nothing for you to add a line to my song or me to add some to your song or someone come behind with a hook. It would all go in and you would all get the credit for it. And I think that's what made the hits hits, because everybody gave from their heart to the music. Yeah, that's what made it happen.
So the first song that I played tambourine on was Dancing in the Street. That record took off and the tambourine was so high. The reason the tambourine was high, they didn't have a microphone and a track for me. So in order to record me, and they said they had to have it, they put me in a booth with the drummer. And the drummer had a mic for the sock cymbal. They said, that's your mic too. So I'm playing tambourine, I'm on the mic for the sock cymbal. So there are times when I lean into it and it gets louder, they can't control that. So what happened, when they got rid of the mix, they can't pull the tambourine down because they pull the sock cymbal down. So they got to leave it all up there. And so now the tambourine is way up there. And if you remember anything about Motown, everyone said the tambourine was too loud at that time. Thank God it was too loud for me.
Let's talk about Stevie Wonder. Now, this is a strange, phenomenal situation. Clarence Paul, who was a writer, producer with us, he and I used to do duets together all over the country. And when I got the A&R job, since Clarence taught me a lot about the blues, I brought Clarence in to work with me at Motown. Plus, he could use the job at that time. This will give me a chance to pay back, see. Anyway, Clarence was there for a while. We got hits rolling out by Holland Dozier, Ivy Joe, Ashford, and no, not Ashford, they were there at the time. But other producers were coming out with some hit records. Clarence, it wasn't happening with him. He was doing a great job working with me, but as far as producing a hit on an artist, it wasn't happening. And I was saying, well, he was getting a little disheartened and I was feeling bad. And I said, okay, Clarence, we got to have a talk. In my mind, I was going to find a way of giving him a couple of months' salary and really letting him go. Now, the day of the meeting, he started to speak first. And I said, well, wait a minute, Clarence. There's something I got to tell you. And he said, no, but something I got to tell you, Waymar. I said, okay, tell me what you're talking about. Say what you got to say. Clarence said, and you know I haven't had any hits over here and I haven't had an opportunity to do anything. I'm sorry. He said, you know I hadn't had a hit over here and I have not had an opportunity to work with none of the big acts because all the other producers got them locked up. But I found this artist I'd like to have a shot at. And I said, what artist? He said, this artist I found, I'd like to work with him. And I said to myself, oh, this is great. I give him an opportunity to work with the artist. If it doesn't work out, he knows I gave him a shot. I can let him go. Everything will work out great. I said, I tell you what, why don't you work with the artist? Bring him in and do a couple of songs. Let's see what happens. He said, oh, man, this is great. He said, but I got to tell you one thing. I said, what's that? He said, he's real young. I said, how young? We got a lot. He said, I mean, real young. I said, you mean as a kid? I said, oh, man. Okay, man, let's get it over with. Bring him on in. He said, one more thing, William R. I said, okay, you're pushing it, Clarence. What's this? He said, he's blind. He's what? He's blind. Let me get this straight. You talking about a young kid that's blind? You're going to break? I said, with all these stairs we got in this studio, and man, Berry Gordy will have a fit. Something happened to that kid. I said, no, man. He said, wait, Ma, you said I could do it. I said, Clarence, here's the deal. Wherever I see that kid, I want to see you. Hand in hand, white on rice, never apart. I don't want to see nothing or hear nothing about anything happening to him unless you're standing right there. He said, okay, Waymar, I got this. I said, okay. He left. A few days later, Clarence comes back, and he has Stevie with him, and his mom and somebody else, his brother. And we're having a session going on in the studio. He said, Waymar, I got Stevie. I want you to hear him. I said, I don't have to hear him. I told you can do it, so do it. He said, but you got to hear him. I said, okay, man, come on. He takes Stevie down in the studio. Benny Benjamin's on the drums. The guys are playing, they're working on a tune, kind of working it out. He takes Stevie over to the drummer. Benny gives him the drums. Stevie sits down. Right in on top, right on the tempo, right on the whole 9 yards. And he's doing the pick it up. Then Clarence takes him from the drums, takes him over to the to the piano player. And the piano player get up, Stevie sits down, feels around a little bit, and then right on that, playing the piano right inside the pocket, never stop. The groove is going on. All the guys is getting hyped up, and they playing and everything. Stevie gets off the piano. Clarence takes Stevie over to the microphone, Stevie takes the harmonica out of his pocket, puts it up to his mouth. Now remember, this pocket, this groove is still going in the studio. Everybody's right in there. And then he started saying, well, and then I started singing and playing and blowing his ass. I said, wow, everybody looked around. Clarence had this big grin on his face, took Steve Bell by the hand, took him out. All the producers immediately started thinking, what songs are going to get this kid? The rest is history. Barry come to me and he said, William R., we want to take the show out, the Motown Review. We want all the artists. We'll do the whole children circuit. I said, oh man, that's incredible. He said, yep. And his sister was going to be in charge. No problem. She calls me and she says, I want you to go with me with the Motown Review. I say, me? I mean, well, you know, I got sessions to do, you know, an artist to work with here. You know, no. My schedule is too heavy. She says, oh, it is? Okay. She hung up. The phone rings again. It's Barry. He said, William R., there's only two people can go with this tour, you or me. So that leaves you. Anyway, he starts telling me about how it's got to be great. We got to be the best one. We got to be hot. We're going to have all these new artists out there. They got to know what's going on. And they trust you. And he's giving me this whole sales pitch. Now, he's a great talker. By the time he finished talking to me, I was really pumped up. Now I got to go.
I asked Earl how much clout did Mickey Stevenson have. He said, under Berry, you got Mickey. You don't get anything done here without him. But I heard songwriters talking about Holland and Doja and Holland. It was Mickey, 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 Mickey.
He was so busy working in the studio with many, many artists and other people who were bringing their songs in. And the company was so busy at that time. There was so much going on. It was so much excitement.
The only thing that bothered me was we got to be the best. So I had to take a look and see what was going on out there to know what that meant. So I started watching all the shows. I went everywhere. I saw every show. And I didn't like hardly any of them. Not that the artists weren't great, but the shows was just drawn out. It was just not professional. And I came back and it dawned on me that we had to bring the whole package. You see, on the tours, they would have not the James Brown, his show was together. James Brown and Ray Charles, and James Brown, Ray Charles were the best two packages out. And the reason is they had their own orchestra and they had the people that did the recording in the studio on stage, so everything sound and looked like the record, and there was no time between. Where other shows would have, different artists would have their own bands, their own sound, and every time one artist got off the stage, a crew had to come out, move everything off stage, bring on the other package, set it up. Now, if their egos were involved, it got worse, because now they had to have the drum set over here, and this had to be set over there, and all this crap. And you could be in the theater, go get a hot dog, a Coke, a holiday sucker, popcorn, eat the whole thing, and the show is still not ready. You can go to the bathroom and come back. What they would do is have a comedian between these setups to try to keep the audience in a groove while they change the stage. Well, it would take so long sometime until even the comedian would say, you ready back yet? Are you ready? And do another 10 minutes. I said, okay, we're going to beat this. We're going to take the Funk Brothers, the whole band, and our artists, and we'll take the whole package out so it goes one right behind the other and sound like the record. Now, to make that happen, I had to rehearse every day in the studio exactly how the show was going to go down. That means I want to see the lights change, the sound fixed, the background on, everything. And that went on and on and on. We rehearsed it till it was absolutely together, ready to roll. Then Smokey Robinson comes up to me and he says, William R., I think you ought to go out and conduct the orchestra with this show. I said, what do you mean? He said, William R., we've been rehearsing it here for weeks. You know every song. You know all the tempos. You know when it's going out, when it's going in. Who can do it better than you? I thought about it for a minute. I said, the brother got a point. I said, okay, I'll do it. So now we're going to roll. Now here's the deal. Every artist, when an artist come off the stage singing their song, instead of going to the dressing room, I had microphones set off stage on the side, both sides of the stage. You get on that mic and you will sing that song with the artist that's going on, because everybody at Motown knew everybody's music. And so the sound was fantastic. The songs were great. Everything was going phenomenal. Only we weren't making any money. I couldn't understand it. We got lines outside, tickets being sold. I mean, this place is packed. I don't get it. Smokey calls me between the shows. He said, William R., man, this is the 4th show tonight. By the way, we're doing 4 and 5 shows tonight. He said, those girls sitting in the front, they singing there, sitting there, they singing all the songs before I get to them. They start singing the songs. I said, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, man, come here. I walked over to the side of the stage, looked out. He said, right, those 3 rows right there. It dawned on me. Nobody was ever leaving the theater. They'd come in, bring little bags with food and sandwiches and shit, and they sit there and they'd watch show after show after show. I said, okay, I'll fix this. I go to the front. I tell them, don't sell no more tickets. So we got back in the theater. We start the overture. I stop the band. I give the audience a wonderful speech. I say, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of this show, everyone would have seen the entire package. And there's a line outside, your brothers and sisters and neighbors waiting to get in. They'd appreciate it if at the end of the show you would leave and they would come in and they'd get an opportunity to see the Motown Review like you do. And everybody laughed and smiled and everything. And I said, are you ready for the show? They said, yeah, applause, applause, applause. Bam, we do the show. When the show is over, nobody moves. I said, wait a minute. I called them to turn the lights up. They turned the lights up in the house. I get the security guards, and we start putting people out. We put everybody out. People were hiding behind the seats, in the bathroom, behind the curtain. I mean, they hated to leave. We finally get them out, and we bring in a whole new audience. And that was the only way that we started making it happen. And I used that routine all the way through in every city. We started moving records, moving artists, and having a great show. That was the Motown Review. The times were getting more and more exciting and wonderful. And the opportunity for some of the Motown artists to appear on television was really growing. Of course, thanks to Dick Clark, he was He was a gift for Motown, and we were a gift for him. He had no hang-ups about bringing Motown artists on his show. He had no hang-ups about bringing any black artists on his show, as I remember. So he was really a wonderful person to work with. But we had our problems. And one of the main ones was working the Ed Sullivan Show. Now, Ed Sullivan was number one on variety shows. And at this point, the Supremes were the hottest group in the world. They were the biggest female artists at that time ever. So Ed Sullivan had to have them on his show. Now, when Ed Sullivan did his show, along with a few others, when they'd bring a black artist on, they would announce the fact that they were coming, whether it was Al Green or whoever, Aretha. I mean, it was like a big announcement. And when all the black people would get some popcorn and get some wine, and they have their drinks, and they gather and they get to the houses and sit in front of these little bitty televisions, small TVs, and they'd be packed in waiting to see their favorite artists come on the show. Well, by the time they would bring the artists on, the show would be over. The credits would be rolling by, the artist sang a few lines, and that's it. When they called for the Supremes to do the Ed Sullivan Show, Gil Askey, who was the conductor for them at this time, went to Ed Sullivan's operation to rehearse the orchestra. Well, they had great string orchestra then. Gil comes in, starts to handing out his music. They stop him cold. They said, "Hold it, what are you doing?" He says, "I'm the conductor for the Supremes." They said, we don't have that. We have our own conductor. You just leave the music, we'll take care of it. So Gil said, "But no, I'm the conductor." And they said, no way. Gil got on the phone right away. He called Motown, got Berry on the line. He said, "Man, they won't let me rehearse the orchestra." Berry said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "No, put somebody on the phone." Whoever was in charge there got on the line to talk to Berry. Berry said, "Now here's the way it works. For the Supremes to go on, Gil will rehearse the orchestra, or they're not going on." And the guy said, "Well, just a moment." He leaves, gets back on the phone again. He says, "All right, he can conduct the orchestra." He said, "Wait a minute," Berry said, "and they'll do 2 songs, and they will have an opportunity to talk to Ed Sullivan." Well, Berry had nothing else to say. Those were the terms. You got to understand, we got the hottest group in the world. And they weren't hot because just black artists, people were buying their records. Everybody was buying their records. And so Berry stood his ground. They went back to Gil, said, "Okay, rehearse." They agreed to everything. When Gil started rehearsing the orchestra on the Supremes music, now you got to understand, Gil is an incredible arranger and a great conductor. He started rehearsing, and while they were rehearsing the music, when a string player or a horn player made a note that was not in the arrangement, while rehearsing, Gil would point to him and say, "That is a B flat. That should be a so-and-so." At the same time, he's rehearsing, moving on through the arrangement. When they finished the rehearsal, the musicians, mainly the string players, took their violins and their bows and they just tapped. It's like in a way of applauding how wonderful this music was and how great Gil was. It was fantastic. So when we did the show, it was marvelous. And of course, they did 2 songs, and Ed Sullivan spoke to them, and they talked, and it was for the first time that didn't go by, that a black artist appeared and totally performed and did a great job. And that broke the wall. Every artist thereafter that came on that show got fair treatment. It was incredible. I loved it. Well, it was time for me to leave Motown. It was very difficult for me to do that.
When I left this company, and he said to me, okay, man, what you want to do? I said, I want to do my own thing. He said, go for it. Do me one favor. I said, what's that? He said, don't say nothing about the company. That might be bad. Don't do any press. Let me see whatever it is. I say, why would you even ask me that? This is my life. This is my family, man. You don't have to ask me that. And everything that I needed when I left, that I wanted to do, he never refused me. I love that. So we've been a family, and we are a family to this very day.
But it got to the place where I wanted to pursue my dream, and which involved theater. I love theater. I mean, theater was a place where you could be in one city and one town or anywhere in the world all at the same time. Just visually make it all happen. And I love that idea. And so I wanted to produce plays and shows, and I got into the bit of doing musicals, but bringing in a Motown kind of sound with the problems of today and combining it all into the musicals that I thought would be appealing to the audience. But like I say, the hardest part was to leave Motown. It was more than a notion. I don't know how to explain it, but I had to get out and didn't want to go. That's a strange place to be. At any rate, the theater was, my brother was directing at the time, and Cliff Rockmore, who's a friend of mine, was directing and producing, and they asked me to give them a hand. And I picked up this deal with them at Inner City Cultural Center, where I had an opportunity to write some music to one of their shows.
He can recite My Fair Lady. He can tell you all the dialogue, all the songs. He can recite Oklahoma. You know what I mean? So that's his genius. You know, he is such a musical person, and he's such his forte, more so than even recording, is Broadway and plays and like that. You know.
Let's try it a little bit faster. 1, 2, 1.
9 years ago, Mickey Stevenson, one-time Motown executive and superstar songwriter, teamed up with the successful TV and film director, Cliff Rockmore. Mickey and Cliff wanted to create and produce black musical theater on Broadway. Now, after years of struggling, the two are well on their way to the top with The Gospel Truth.
Mickey Stevenson has to be one of the most creative talents that we've had in any kind of music. For him to create and diversify like he does, you know, everybody's not the same, makes him unique in any industry because of the fact we actually know rhythm and blues and Motown for unique talent. There were so many that came through, and Mickey had his hand on most of them, and all of them were identifiable. So I really believe that he probably set a landmark for uniqueness in the Motown area. And it's in plays, because the plays that he did were innovative. I don't think there are many of the artists or the producers who were doing the kind of work Mickey was doing?
I worked in at least 4 of his plays. You know, he was one of the hardest working men I had ever met. And so he made us work triply hard. He made us work hard. We were in the studio doing backgrounds and doing scales, working with coaches, just to make sure that we had the right vocal timbre. And we got a chance to really show off his gift in writing. He writes some of the most wonderful songs, best melodies, best lyrics I've ever experienced. And I think that's his biggest gift, is writing, songwriting. It was a song he wrote for a show called Wings and Things. There's no more pretending, it's finished now. The final finale, it's the ending. I can go where I want, whenever I want to. I can do what I please. There's no one to account to. I can hear myself saying it, but I just can't believe that it's true. It's true. I had just broken up with my boyfriend, and I sang that song after that. I'd had this huge fight. It was wonderful. I mean, the audience went like, yeah! It was great.
I've been involved with him in doing some plays, but basically what I've done is written some songs for them and you know, gone to rehearsals and stuff like that to kind of, you know, do the song production and like that. But for the overall play, you know, he's the man.
I gotta tell you, working with Motown and all the great artists was fantastic. But that was yesterday. I was a producer, writer, publisher, director, and guess what? I still am. Producer, writer, publisher, director. I'm having more fun now than ever.
I think the thing that makes Mickey Stevenson tick is creating. He loves to create things. He creates talent, he creates music, he creates theatrical productions. His goal all the time is to make something new, something that consumers will like and will cherish and will always come out and see and support. He's constantly creating something, and that's what makes him happy.
The people that I'm working with today are just wonderful, very talented. I'm having a great time. I'm bringing in all my experiences and the knowledge that I acquired, and I can give it to them, and they pick it up fast, and it's just fantastic.
I first met Mickey at his house, and he came out and talked to me. He was very calm and laid back, dressed down. His hair was flying everywhere, you know, in the traditional Mickey fashion. And he just told me who he was. And very briefly, though, he didn't really get into depth. He just said that he had been with Motown and he had done some stuff over there. And he told me to Google him. And so that's what I did. Later on, I went and Googled him, and then I felt kind of embarrassed that I didn't know who he was. He was that key mechanism that helped bring my passion and desires into fruition. You know, before him, I was just trying to do music. You know, once I got with him and took in some of those lessons and just got on the approach that he put me on, then I started doing music. You know, then I became in the industry. Then I became a professional. There isn't a musician or a singer alive that's not familiar with Motown and the Motown music and the various Motown artists and the sound that came from there. And so when you think about it like that, and then you go back and say, well, he is the one. He was so impactful in helping to create and design that sound, which went on to then influence so many different artists and producers and writers down the lines, and just a chain reaction from, you know, artists and producers and writers of the 70s to the 80s to the 90s to the 2000s and to today. You know, they've all received that influence, whether they know it or not. You know, because Motown culture, it went past just music. You know, it stepped into just life, period, and movies. I mean, how many times have you seen a great movie and here comes a Motown song?
Everyone understands that the power of Motown, the music, the memories that goes so far back, and that we knew that there was power in the name Motown. And so the idea was, what can we do to really maximize that in the new age? Mickey is so forward thinking. He's not stuck in the past. So he allowed me that opportunity to understand what had happened. What we found, which isn't surprising, is that anyone who's ever been associated or touched by Motown still has it in their heart. One time we were doing a special for NBC. NBC has a show called Starskates. I had worked with the guy and come up with a Motown theme. And so we were doing a Motown, and I think we had the Temptations and the Four Tops who were booked, and Martha Reeves was supposed to go. And so next thing you know, Martha's backing out at the last minute. All of a sudden I get the phone call, this thing is breaking up. And I said, Mick, I don't know what to do. Martha is about, he said, hold on, let me get it. Next thing you know, we're on a three-way with Martha, what's going on? Listen, you know, I need you to do, he cleared everything up and went on like without a hitch.
So there was this one time where Mickey had been solicited to write some contemporary music for a play that was being done on Motown overseas in Berlin. And he wrote some stuff, and then he came to me and said, I want you to, you know, tweak the song, modernize it a little bit. You know, I got the base of what I want, but I want you to put your influence on there. And so I did that. And that was that. He's like, I said, what is it for? He said, oh, it's for a play or a celebration of 50 years Motown music in Germany. I said, okay. I went on vacation. It was the holidays, Christmas, whatever. I think that was probably about December 15th, maybe. So I'm out on vacation. I'm staying till like New Year's. I get a call on December 30th or 31st, one or the other. Mickey's like, okay, how fast can you be ready to go to Berlin? I said, excuse me? He's like, oh man, they love the song that we did. They want us to come out there and perform it and sing it on stage. How fast can you be ready? I was like, well, when you want me to be ready? How about tomorrow? I was like, well, book the flight. So you just gotta be ready to drop it all and go. Now I'm halfway across the world singing this song that I thought I was done with when I wrote it or helped him write it. He didn't tell me that I was gonna be involved in performing it or any theatrical parts. Next thing you know, I'm singing backgrounds for people, I'm leading, I'm narrating certain things, certain moments.
You know, there's some magic that happens when you mix 50 years of history and work with the creative hearts and souls of young kids like I did with Justin Holly and the Motown song. Oh man. Motown music makes you clap your hands, makes you snap your fingers, makes you get up and dance, dance.
Marvin Gaye, that brother could sure enough put a song their way. Just let the record play, you're smoking tracks with tears, and it's music to my ears. Ooh, baby, baby, you drive me crazy, singing songs of yesterday. Motown music makes you clap your hands, makes you snap your fingers, makes you get up and dance. Such a feeling I adore. Help me, y'all. Motown music makes you clap your hands, makes you snap your fingers, makes you get up and dance. Every time I hear my favorite song, I get excited and sing along. forget the ladies. Diana Ross, Supremes, Gladys and the Pips. They really did the trick. It's like a heat wave when I hear my girl Martha Reeves sing dancing in the street. Everybody, come on. Motown music makes you clap your hands, makes you snap your fingers, makes you get up and dance. Every time I hear my favorite song, I get excited and sing along. One more time, come on. Motown music makes you clap your hands, makes you snap your fingers, makes you get up and dance. Every time I hear my favorite song, I get excited and sing along.
Oh, never gonna break it up. No, I'm never gonna stop loving you, baby. Never gonna walk away. Never gonna say I'm leaving, baby. Ever since you came, you stayed.
Yeah.
She should have known when we kissed like that. She's not the type of girl to really cross my tracks. Should have known when I hung up my head that summer night.
It was the great occasion and opportunity that we had to be able to honor him at the California African American Museum. Mickey represents a foundation. He represented someone who, without him, there really probably would have been no Motown in the way that we all came to know it. And so we wanted to make sure everybody knew who he was and just how much he had brought to the table.
Motown's 50th anniversary celebration was not about the stars, Diana, Stevie, Smokey, Lionel, the Temptations, etc., but about the people who made the stars, the unsung heroes. And Mickey Stevenson leads the list. I salute you, Mickey Stevenson, as you receive the California African American Museum's Tom Bradley Unsung Hero Award.
I've been nominated for awards, quite a few awards, all at the same time. And I was telling some of my friends, I said, hey, I've been nominated for these awards and, I don't understand it. They said, William R., it's about time. You deserve them, man. You did some great things. And I'm saying, what? What things? I appreciate it. I mean, I feel honored, but everything I did, and that means everything, with everybody, I did it from the heart. And that's the truth.
There are pieces of him in so many other people. You know, he has left little gems of himself everywhere, and I think that that's part of what his calling is too. You know, because an A&R person, that's what they do. They shape artists. So he has to do that. He's having to give each one of them a piece of him. So there are lots of pieces of Mickey all around. So I think that to say that there'll never be another one of him is a little bit off, because there'll always be some parts of him around, because he's touched so many people that are now touching other people. So his teachings and his rhythms and those kinds of things, they're everywhere. So he'll always be there.
He's crazy. He'll keep you laughing from morning until night. He will. He'll keep you laughing. And then in it, he teaches. How he does it, I'll never know. But the stories and things that he puts together not only makes you laugh, but it gives you an education, and it lifts your spirits. It inspires you and keeps you to go on.
He has a nurturing quality about his personality. He likes to see things work. He likes to see people get better. That's what makes him such a good teacher.
Mickey Stevenson, my pops, hardworking man. I love him to death. I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for him. Very hard on me, but it paid and it shows in my work. And I've learned more about diversity, how to not box myself in because of my pops. My pops always was the type of guy that was like, if you're a real producer and a songwriter, you don't stick to one genre of music. You should love it all, whether it's country, rock, alternative, pop. And those are the guys I admire wanting to be like. My father, Quincy Jones, Rick Rubin, John Bryan, you know, producers that you can't put them in a box. So if anything I could say, that was one of the most things I've learned from my pops and I took to heart. And it took me a long time. I mean, I was kicking and screaming because I was like, it's done this way. And when you're young, you think you know everything. So I've become more patient and just have a better understanding of music because of my pops. So, love you, Pops.
Mickey Stevenson is my brother, and I love him with all my heart. He is one of the closest people to me in life. And I am very, very happy that I get the chance to spend my life with him and be with him like we are, as much as we are. I think that one of the wonderful things about the Motown men, those of them or those of us who have gone, who have passed on, you know, we have that same brotherhood. And those of us who are still here share that same brotherhood that is irreplaceable. It's like unbelievable to have that kind of friendship and that kind of brotherhood for these many years. Most of us have known each other well over 50 years. You know what I mean? So to still have that and for that to be prevalent in your life is unbeatable.